In this video, we'll be covering the history of Gradius and the development of the upcoming Gradius Origins by developer M2. This video has exclusive information directly from the developers at M2, as well as this video's sponsor, Konami. We also have tons of fascinating insight from old interviews and documents. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this journey into the lore, impact, and creation of Gradius and Gradius Origins. The original Gradius was so difficult that it forced one developer to create the famous Konami code. After Gradius' successful 1985 release in arcades, Konami programmer Kazuhisa Hashimoto was tasked with porting the game to the Famicom and Nintendo Entertainment System. Hashimoto hadn't played much of Gradius in arcades and couldn't even beat the game. On top of this, he only had about 6 months to port the game to NES. With limited experience and a tight deadline, Hashimoto knew he'd have to cheat to finish development on time. His solution was an unnamed code, which was later dubbed the Konami code, a button sequence he could easily remember that activated almost every power-up in the game. After fans discovered the cheat code, it became far more popular than Hashimoto ever intended, and has now appeared in well over 100 Konami titles and many more games from other developers, paying tribute to its legacy. The original arcade release of Gradius was directed by Hiroyasu Machiguchi, who kicked development off by asking his team what kind of game they'd like to make, to which they unanimously responded, a shoot-'em-up. The team wanted Gradius to become the gold standard of shmups. This was a tall order for a team that didn't have all that much development experience, resulting in them feeling anxious about their goal and lacking confidence. The game actually started development under the title Scramble 2, and was planned to be a sequel to one of Konami's earlier shoot-'em-ups, Scramble. In the September 1999 issue of Japan's Game Hyo magazine, Machiguchi recalled, "We made Gradius a horizontal scroller because we had materials for Scramble and decided to reuse those as much as possible. In fact, Gradius originally started as Scramble 2. Development for Gradius was a process of continual experimentation and refinement. Western computer RPGs had started releasing in Japan, and the concepts of building your character and going off on an adventure were becoming popular. The team wanted to incorporate this sense of adventure into Gradius, and originally planned to have branching paths at the end of levels, so players could choose where to go next. Unfortunately, due to memory restrictions, this idea was abandoned. But giving players freedom of choice was still a priority, and the team experimented with different ways to incorporate it. The team had the idea to let players pick up power-ups and store them, giving them some freedom with how they play and strategize. But they struggled with how this would be implemented. Inspired by how function keys on personal computers were laid out, they designed an innovative power-up gauge that let players toggle between power-ups before using one. Machiguchi stated, "After that, we made the power-up button. At that time, there were almost no 3-button control panels, so we also made a 2-button version of Gradius, but it wasn't very fun. In the end, after thinking about the players' responses from testing, we decided on the 3-button setup. The 2-button version simply felt underdeveloped and more like a Famicom port than a groundbreaking arcade title." The world of Gradius was inspired by sci-fi movies of the era. And although the final game features a high-tech aesthetic, Gradius originally had an organic, alien feel to its graphics. In the Gradius Portable Guide, designer Kengo Nakamura stated, "Enemy designs were all organic, like the Ducker enemy, who was a cockroach. The fact that the enemies in Gradius are mechanical, but move more like organic creatures, is a remnant from that early design." Nakamura went on to say that reworking all the designs took around 4 months, including 2 months of procrastinating. Early on, the team brainstormed themes for levels and settings, and came up with a fantasy world full of ancient ruins and mystery. This conjured up images of Easter Island's Moai statues and Stonehenge floating on a continent in outer space, which the team thought was pretty cool. At first, the moai were just part of the background, but Nakamura wanted the moai to be more than just decoration. He recalled, "I said we can't just leave it like this, and so I worked hard with the BG designer, suggesting they shoot rings from their mouths and can be destroyed. I don't really know why I thought they should be shooting rings from their mouths." Overall, development of Gradius was almost as tough as the game itself. The team worked down to the wire and were building the game's final stage right up until the last minute. The team didn't even have enough time to refine the design of the final boss, and ended up going with a giant brain because none of them could think of a better idea in the limited time they had left. That said, the simplicity ended up working in their favor. The team felt that the game was so difficult overall, it was kind of a nice break to have a simplistic final boss that players could destroy without it firing anything back. Gradius went through rigorous bug testing, and Konami incentivized staff to playtest the game and find bugs by offering a free VCR for anyone who found an important bug. Kengo Nakamura gave some details, saying, "All the employees cooperated on bug checks for each other's projects, and we'd create a schedule for a 24-hour rotation. One amazing thing was that the employee who found an important bug would get a free VCR. We had a ranking system for bugs, A, B, and C level, and it was like an exchange counter where you'd present your A-level bug and say, 'VCR please!' Back in the 80s, a new VCR could cost hundreds of dollars, thousands for a high-end model, and Konami had tons of them piled up in the checking room so developers could see what they were working for. There's actually a bit of widespread misinformation about how Gradius was named. Many assumed that the title Gradius came from the word gladius, which refers to a kind of short sword used by ancient Roman soldiers. According to Nakamura, however, the name Gradius was thought up by a co-worker who helped him redesign all those early organic designs into mechs. The team knew they wanted a name with a G sound somewhere in it, and during a meeting to think up names, the co-worker suggested the name Gradius. This was apparently a modification of, quote, a certain sci-fi movie title? There were other candidates, but none were as memorable or easy to say, so Gradius won out. Gradius's legacy would continue over the years with a whole host of sequels and spin-offs, like the Salamander sub-series. Gradius Origins is a collection of 6 of these past titles with all new features, as well as the brand new game Salamander 3. We got to speak to folks over at Konami and M2 about the development of Origins, with exclusive insight from the developers themselves. Gradius was a series that M2 president Naoki Hori has been wanting to work on for a long time, and M2 has a long history of working closely with Konami on some of their most prized franchises. With the series' 40th anniversary coming up, Konami producer Ryusaku Ueno felt the time was right for an enhanced collection of Gradius series titles. M2 felt like the obvious choice for the task. From the outset, it was decided this collection would focus on the original Gradius arcade game and the other core arcade titles that evolved the series, Gradius 2 and Gradius 3, as well as Salamander and its Japan-exclusive re-release, Life Force. Ueno told DidYouKnowGaming, "We wanted to begin by packaging these Origin titles together. As for Salamander 2, it was on the borderline of whether to include it. It's currently unplayable on modern hardware, and we thought if we can include it, we should." Fortunately, M2 had prior experience porting Salamander 2 for Salamander Portable on PSP, so despite the tight schedule, we were able to make it happen. With the 40th anniversary of Gradius quickly approaching, the team didn't have much time to spare. This resulted in the developers having to leave out another important title they wanted in the collection, Gradius 4. Gradius 4 was developed for the Konami Hornet arcade board, which had unique hardware with more of a focus on 3D graphics. Its uniqueness ended up being the reason it wasn't included in Gradius Origins, as porting it would have required significant time and resources. But this is why the team wanted to create a whole new game for the collection. Ueno told us, As for the new title, Salamander 3, from the very beginning, we discussed creating something similar to Gradius Rebirth, which was released on WiiWare. Since we couldn't include Gradius 4, we felt a new title was necessary. As mentioned, given the time constraints, we carefully considered our options and ultimately decided on Salamander 3 instead of Rebirth 2. If the opportunity arises in the future, I'd love to find a way to include Gradius 4. The titles in Gradius Origins have been perfectly recreated by M2, who extensively tested the game by having the original titles running on original arcade hardware on one screen and their emulated version on a second monitor side by side. The team then analyzes the gameplay frame by frame, correcting errors until there are zero discrepancies between the two. M2's goal was to recreate the games as faithfully as possible so players could experience them in their original form, but to add new features for veteran players. M2 director Takahiro Kawachi told us, "We've added various elements to make the game more accessible and enjoyable. We've applied all the knowledge we gained from M2 shot triggers to this project. Nearly 20 years have passed since the PSP version was developed, and there has been significant progress in programming technology. Moreover, our understanding of how the original hardware operates, how to compare it, and how to bring our version closer to the original through thorough testing has greatly improved, and we've applied all of that knowledge to this title." The collection's games also have new features like Rewind, online rankings, all new easy modes and training modes to practice and hone skills, and Invincible mode which counts mistakes instead of deaths. But to us, the most impressive feature is the ability to choose ROMs from different regions and dates, including pre-release versions of Gradius and Gradius 3. We asked Ryusaku Ueno why they decided to include these pre-release ROMs. He told us, "One thing we felt especially strongly about was including the Gradius 3 AM show version, a long dreamed of build among fans. This version was shown for only 2 days at a Japanese game show, roughly 3 months before the retail release. It featured a different stage order and balance adjustments compared to the final version. It was widely covered in Japanese gaming magazines at the time and became known as a legendary version, one that many fans had heard of, but few had ever played. With every new port, fans would ask, what about the Gradius 3 AM show version? This time, we were able to uncover materials preserved by Konami. While we didn't have the original arcade board, we did manage to obtain a ROM storage box." Ueno went on to say that restoring the build wasn't easy, but one of M2's younger staff members, who was an avid Gradius 3 fan, put his heart into it and made sure the ROM was fully working and was included. M2 really went above and beyond for the new Gradius Origins collection, so check it out for yourself and experience 6 classic titles with new features and enhancements, as well as the all-new title Salamander 3. Gradius Origins is out now on all major platforms, and you can click our link at the top of the description for more information. Thanks again to Konami for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.